Like to call to order the January 9th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Weaver,
Here.
McElhaney, here, Judkins,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
and do we have McCoy yet?
Very good.
I'll let you know.
If you all would rise, we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know of no changes to the agenda.
Approval. Second.
Motion second on the agenda. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We have approved the agenda. Next item is our citizen presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And Pete, if you want to check and see if we have anyone online wishing to join us. And if there's anyone in the chamber for the citizen presentation, we invite them forward at this time. And I'm seeing no one coming forward to the podium. Do we have anyone online?
For those online, I'd like to get our attention in the chamber. You can use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. Do that, just the bottom, the reactions at the bottom of your screen, and choose raise hand. I do not see any hands going up.
Thank you very much. Before we move into our presentation, we've got one more matter to cover. We want to celebrate Eric Klein's 15 years as a member of the city council. And so we have a certificate to present and a picture to take. So put your jacket on. Celebrate, right word. So Peter will take a picture.
Yeah, we'll get you. We'll get you, we'll keep it. Okay, well, keep it here.
The 190. Congratulations. First up on our agenda is presentation on Icon. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me. Good evening, everyone. Congratulations. 15 years is amazing. It's a lot of evenings serving your community. That's well-deserved
A
recognition.
lot more than 50 years of evenings.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephanie Oppel. I serve as the Executive Director of Icon Water Trails, a role I've held for about the last year and a half, going in on a year and a half. Thrilled to be here to just share a few updates, answer any questions that you might have about all things water trails. We are just so glad to have Clive as a member of the Icon Water Trails Regional Network. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that I mention is y'all are doing such a good job at taking advantage of the member benefits that we offer. I'll talk a little bit about those overall, but you know, some of the advantages of being a member on water maintenance, we are always connecting with you all about that and doing improvements to Walnut Creek. Our Mid-American Energy Regional Grant Opportunity. You all provided a great application and were awarded that in 23. The Icon and Bravo Public Art Grant, also a great application and were awarded that recently as well. These are all things that are coming back to the community because of your participation in Icon. And I'm really glad that you all are taking advantage of that. So thank you for being active and great members of the network. Couple of downtown updates I wanted to share with you because we hear a lot about that, and downtown is really a catalyst for driving the network forward when we think about tourism on a state, regional, and even a national scale. If you recall, Icon is forecasted to be the second most visited whitewater attraction in the nation once we are activated. And that's a pretty big deal from a tourism perspective. I think we're going to surpass that and end up number one. It's a lot easier to get to Des Moines from all across the country than it is to get to Bend, Oregon. But I am going to go out to Bend in the spring. There's a conference out there in April, and I'm going to go out there and check that out. So I'll see why they're giving us a run for our money. We crossed a significant fundraising threshold in the fall. We were able to announce $100 million raised for the public infrastructure downtown at our Wild Prairie Showdown in October. Hubble Realty came in. They were the first gift, the first $1 million gift, and the 100th $1 million gift. So very exciting to have that celebrated. Scott Avenue, which is at the confluence there, work is going really, really well. We have finished up kind of that north half of the river. They're working on the habitat channel and fish passage, as well as the recreational amenities. Day I'm really looking forward to this summer is the day that they bring the wave shaper down. Now that's the 20-foot like big flipper with bladders underneath it. It is currently being fabricated up in Michigan. And then that will come down and be installed later this summer. That in-water work will be done at the end of 25. I get to say this year now. This is the first time I've said the in-water work will be done this year. And then the Uplands Park the following spring into summer. So we will see activation of that Scott Avenue site in 26. Fleur Drive right by Grays Lake. We are at 90% for those designs, on schedule with permitting and everything, and looking to break ground in the summer. So that project is right on track. We have a couple of other smaller downtown projects. Harriet Street, almost complete. We decided to defer installing some of the lights and signage and things like that to the spring. Have one winter that's kind of kept off of those things and do that in the spring. Otherwise, that one is essentially ready to go. And then Prospect and Birdland, we continue to raise funding for that, but we are getting ever closer to being able to tackle those projects as well. Center is still a little bit of a ways off. As you all know, that's the kind of jewel of the Icon network, excuse me, very complicated from a lot of different facets. So we'll continue to talk with federal agencies about that, state, local, and make sure that we are approaching that as best we can, but working on picking up some more intensive design with that the next 18 months or so. Regionally, lots of things going on. Was happy to share that we worked on over 15 miles of water trails in this past year with our on-water maintenance program. We still have funding available for that. I know this is not like the month that anybody wants to be down in the water, but we will have crews back out. We actually had one just a few weeks ago on the Raccoon in West Des Moines, but we do continue to have opportunities. I'm really looking forward to Cole Miller, who's our regional coordinator. He is going to be getting his drone pilot license this spring so that he can go out and do some more investigation. Right now, our process is really that you all tell us where there are issues, and then we come out and see how we can help. We want him to take a more active approach in that and identifying any issues that might be there. So we'll continue to work on that. You know, we just had our latest round of Mid-American regional funding, just notified that awardee last week. So look for an announcement coming soon on another project that will be supported by the Icon network. I just got some really great reports too on the media and marketing strategies that we have on raising awareness of the money that we're investing. We are seeing just many, many, many times over in terms of earned media, which draws people to the Icon website, and the most visited pages beyond the homepage is where people are going to the water trail sites. And they're using that to look at what the opportunities are, that they can plan their activities and how they want to engage. We were really pleased to be invited to join you all. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but Cole participated in the groundbreaking event for the Green Belt, and we'll be thrilled to see that come online. It'll be really, really nice addition to the Water Trails Network, and we'll keep growing from there. The document you have in front of you, this is a guidebook to Icon. We know there are so many pieces of what we are doing. We wanted to put together a really simple, straightforward, but comprehensive guide to everything that a member community needs to know to maximize their engagement in Icon and really understand how we approach different aspects of it. So each one of you has one of these. So take a look at that. It's also, great for staff. You can take a peek at it. Like, should I call Icon about this? We're here to help. So we will continue to put on different activities. One of the things we will be doing this summer is kind of a more organized cleanup event. So we've been doing different various cleanups, but we want to have a network-wide cleanup event. So Cole's been reaching out to folks about that so that we can have something going on in every Icon community at the same time as we continue to celebrate and improve the water trails. So look forward to that one too. But I won't take much more of your time. Any questions anyone has for me about anything Icon?
Any questions? Oh, Susan.
Yeah.
I was interested to look at the map that wasn't for downtown, but for the rest of the
Uh-huh.
areas. And just kind of curious about what the site numbering is, and is this something that's going to keep evolving?
Great question. So the site numbering came from the MPO master plan document. We right now have a contract with Bolton and Mink. They are helping us with signage. So maps for downtown is where the first piece that we'll have to start with. And as part of that, we will identify if we're going to evolve any of this site numbering. We know the Icon network will continue to grow. So we want to make sure that we are very intentional in that. And also we'll be getting into, this, Susan, is like a pretty marketing map. But we're working on the GIS data and all of that to be able to have a good usable map that will show people time between access points and things like that. So look to soon for invitation to engage in that process. One of the things that we want to do as well is develop a signage family so that we make that really easy for the communities to implement as well. So we'll be inviting participation and engagement and input in that soon.
Yeah, I know staff has had some engagement, the Icon folks, in terms as we think about Greenbelt land use signage, particularly for the water access.
Good.
Quick comment. So thanks, Stephanie, for being here. Really
Sure,
appreciate
happy
it.
to.
And Stephanie's just doing a fantastic job.
Oh, thanks.
It's a really complex endeavor, lots of different projects, complex financing, when you're talking about lots of private investment, public investment, the MPOs involved with it. So a lot of moving parts here, and a lot to manage. And Stephanie's really just jumped in the last couple of years and just taken leadership and really done a great job. So just wanted to
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. The board's been fantastic. Ted's always been available when I have a question. And I know Cole really appreciates working with all of you too. So look forward to, seeing this all activated and celebrating ribbon cutting for the Greenbelt when we get there. And, one day we'll even we'll do some paddles on Walnut, like get that all set up and everything. So it'll be good.
The other thing I did want to mention, I did ask Stephanie to bring these, because this is a really great
Yeah.
synopsis. You hear me talking about Scott Avenue or Floor, and it's sometimes hard to envision. That's all in here, right? So it makes it a little bit easier to envision that.
Yeah, we also did to include like a terms because sometimes the icon, it's like anything, we have our own jargon. So we made sure to include that too. So I'm saying something that's like, the heck are you talking about? It's right in there. So reach out anytime. But Ted always does a great job of participating. I think there's been one board meeting you haven't been able to attend, but his always there is on top of everything that's going on. So if you have any questions, he knows what's going on.
Again, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, we have consent.
Approval?
Motion is second on the consent. Further discussion, if not, so council please vote. And will clerk please announce that vote?
Yes.
That's 5-0.
It passes. We were in suspense. Next, we move into our action items, starting with ordinance number 1155 on sidewalk liability. Mark? I understand our city manager was interviewed yesterday. So we should
Yes, I
watch
was,
the news
yes.
tonight.
Yes, yeah, KCCI was reached out with an interested in this particular item and learning more about it.
Very good. Well, Mark, what can you tell us?
Congratulations, Councilmember Klein. Amazing commitment. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am here this evening to present the third and final consideration for the ordinance amendment regarding the sidewalk liability. Staff have not received any comments or concerns and therefore recommend approval. Thank you, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Mark? Otherwise, we're looking at the third.
Move that ordinance number 1155 be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopt.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And
Yes.
Clerk, announce that vote. Oh, wow, it's working. That passes by a vote of 5-0. Ordinance number 1155 is declared to have been enacted. All right, now we'll move on to the next ordinance, 1156. Amanda.
Mayor, council, good evening. I now also have to congratulate Councilman Klein, so I don't look bad,
Oh,
but.
this is quick, everybody too.
Tonight, we have the third and final consideration of an update to permitted uses in commercial districts, specifically related to schools. We have not received any public comments or inquiries from any stakeholders since the public hearing or the second consideration, and there have been no revisions since the public hearing and second consideration. So with that, I'd answer any questions, and staff would recommend approval.
Any questions? Otherwise, we're looking at the third
Move
consideration.
that ordinance number 1156 be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopted.
Motion and a second by Shrikant. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the
Yes.
announce? Post that vote. And it passes by a vote of 5-0. Ordinance number 1156 is declared to have been enacted. Jeff, you're next up.
Mayor, council, good evening. We have on the agenda an item of setting a public hearing for some acquisitions that we need to do. The hope is, of course, that we don't have to follow through with the use of eminent domain, but this is actually the start of that process. There's 5 parcels we need to acquire. We've actually acquired 2 of them. So we've got 3 to go. The reason for setting this is to keep the project moving. When you look at the working days needed to complete the project, we need to start as early as possible in the spring. Any delays could cause this phase 1A to be delayed and be finished the following year, which we'd prefer not to do. So by setting this, we keep this process moving. It's available to us. If necessary, and if we don't have them all by the 13th, we'll hold the public hearing and move forward with this. It doesn't mean we have to do eminent domain at that time. Once we set the public hearing, we'll go to the court to set up a hearing date to meet with the property owners to discuss this. We have up until the date of that hearing to actually settle with them before proceeding with this process. But this is basically to start the process and have it available to us if we need it as a last resort.
Very good question.
What's important about setting the process now and having the process in play is you can continue with the bidding process for the actual street project. So then that can happen in parallel, all the way up to the court hearing date with property owners. We're having regular engagement with them. In fact, Jeff met with one of them here just this afternoon. So our hope is, again, this is just a backstop. We hope to get voluntary acquisitions in all these cases.
Very good. Question?
Just, Matt, just a clarification that this is a backstop. We're not planning on using an eminent domain, but this is something that will be a last ditch effort. Hopefully we can work out through resolution and dialogue these negotiations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Like I said, of the 5 parcels we need, we just today acquired 2 of them, so down to 3.
All right, very good. What we're looking for is just a resolution saying.
Resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote? And with.
Yes.
Yeah, that vote. And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up, Pete is going to talk about community engagement.
Along with your honor, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up. Mayor, so since I'm advancing the slides and I'm sort of stuck at this spot in our temporary setup, I'll just sit here as I'm trying. One other note too, Councilman McCoy noted that because we're using mostly that roomed mic that's right above the speaker spot, the speakers are sounding really, really good for folks virtually, but when we're a little bit further away, it's a little bit quieter. So we may need to project a little bit with our questions and discussion so everybody else can hear. Okay. So this is one of my favorite things I get to do on an annual basis. Talk about all the ways in the coming year that we're going to engage your constituents, engage the businesses of Clive, make sure that we are there to provide accurate and timely information, answer questions, but in general, with all of that, tell stories that are helping them understand and helping them believe what we see in the survey data, which is people really enjoy being a part of this community. That optimism, that hopefulness about what's happening here in the city of Clive is a key part of our brand. And this engagement strategy is designed to promote that, to further that, and also align with all the strategic priorities that you all set through strategic planning each year. So each time I present, I like to reinforce what the people are telling all of us that they believe are the most important things for us to do, because we want to make sure our storytelling is very much focused in these areas too. If we're ever missing enough content in these areas around safety, natural environment, parks and recreation, economy, utilities, but put streets and transportation in there as well, then we're not doing something right. We need to make sure we always have a critical mass of stories that are hitting on these topics. They are on those 2 charts. You see a comparison of 2022 to 2024. I think we could pull up this chart for every year that we've conducted the survey and find that same sort of clustering in the top right corner, which are the items that people say are most important for the city to do. And in our case, items that they say that we are performing very well on as a community. Quality of life in Clive is another one that I like to keep coming back to, because a lot of our stories are going to fall with sort of in this space where we talk about Clive as a great place to live and some of the other things that go into this facet of livability. For a decade now, Clive has sustained very, very high ratings for being for overall quality of life as a place to live, the neighborliness of your place where you live. These are all results for the most part that are higher than the national benchmark. Governance is also something that we like to lift up, not only because it's one of our strengths, according to our survey data, but it's also a place where I think we see Clive bucking a national trend. So the term that I found from a recent national survey after the election was civic cynicism, where it seems today that no matter if you're left or right, or whatever demographic group you fall into, there was a shift in all these groups toward a deepening sort of skepticism about public institutions. I've been talking about this multiple years in a row now because I see it as a real threat to sort of the legitimacy of our storytelling if people start to feel that way about Clive. But what I'm very happy to report is that no, that is not the way that residents feel about Clive. That's not the way your businesses feel about the work that you all do. In fact, they are very satisfied with the way that you all are serving them through your honesty, through your integrity, through being open and transparent to the public, and for delivering value for taxes paid. I'm going to come back to that theme of value for taxes paid many times because I think of trying to boil down the most important headline that we are going to need to work on this year as a group of storytellers, it's going to be value for taxes paid. And I'll get to that reason for that in just a moment. Here's another slide that I like to come back to frequently. This is sort of showing the spectrum of engagement strategies that we can use from on one end purely to inform, and on the far end there would be directly empowering your residents and businesses to make decisions with you around policy, programs, all the other things that come before you. Most of the time, our storytelling is over on the inform end of the spectrum. Accurate, timely information, a lot of basics like there's street closure, like we did with 86th Street earlier this week. But we'll also have big projects that come up where we want to have that more direct involvement and participation. So a good example would be when we're going to go ask the residents and the kiddos at Crestview to do a little voting on what playground they'd like to see. I think the Stonegate playground voting this year was just a massive, massive success. It wasn't hard to do to set that up. The technology really empowers us to be able to get directly to people in a time frame that works for them and get that feedback and give them an experience of really contributing to a good decision that's going to be made by the city. That said, even though we do have some of these tools that help us be more efficient with our engagement, generally, as you move from inform to empower, the lift gets heavier the further to the empower side of the spectrum that you go. So we always need to make sure that when we put a campaign out there, a plan for how we're going to do some storytelling, that we right size it given what our resources are to actually execute it. Here are your strategic priorities that you've approved for 2025. We always want to make sure that we are aligning our storytelling to achieve these priorities. And now I want to focus on a couple of campaigns I think that are really going to be important. First and foremost, it's going to be our CIP and FY 25-26 storytelling. So last year, you'll recall, sort of as we were getting ready for the first year of HF 718, we wanted to be way out in front of it. We wanted to have excellent materials put together for all of you to share, for us to all share with residents so they got accurate information about the budget you were proposing, the tax rates you all were suggesting, and all of the other critical investments you're making through the CIP. It was a successful effort. A number of other cities sort of looked to what we put together and said, yep, we're going to kind of model our next round on what Clive has done. I think we've got some additional improvements to make. We're working right now as a staff to figure out if we can find an easier way for people to get parcel specific information about their taxes and their properties that they own and what they could be in the future, given the budget that you all are proposing and the tax rate. I also think that there's some opportunities for us to continue elevating sort of the story of the historic investments that you all are making through the CIP, especially in streets. This year, Molly and I are going to be working on a hype video for Clive, sort of a year-end summary that we hope to unveil with the Mayor's State of the City presentation that will be in March. And as part of that, we've been collecting for the past 12 months all these different images and project updates and other facts that we're going to be able to put together. We hope sort of in the same kind of style that the partnership puts together when they put their year-end video together. So that'll be one more tool that we can put in the toolbox to tell this story. Why is it the most important story? No big surprise. The state legislature has said they want to further change the tax environment. The way that these debates go, I don't want to try and predict every place they could go, but I am concerned that in the course of that discussion, there may be some who lift up cities as either not good stewards of tax dollars or being wasteful or being bloated, or generally not being responsive to what residents say they want. I think all of those things are far from the truth when it comes to Clive and the way that their elected officials, all of you, represent them through the budget building process and through the CIP building process. Our survey data backs it up. People are very proud of these investments. They're appreciative of those investments that are made. They think that we deliver great value for taxes paid. And I don't want to see Clive get painted with a brush in the state capitol that then ends up leaking out into some of these other spaces. The way to fight back against that kind of a negative and inaccurate narrative is with our positive, optimistic, and accurate narrative that is coming directly and is validated by residents, businesses, and is consistent with all the transparency that we've done for multiple years as we've been building these budgets. So it'll take a lot of lifting. I'm bringing, though, sort of an optimistic spirit to the work because I know that we can do well in these spaces. We know that what we've produced in the past resonated with our audiences. And we've got the muscle on staff, I think, to keep building in this space and to keep doing better year over year. Before I go off this topic, are there any questions that folks have right now on this campaign? Okay, it's gonna be very focused in the first 2 quarters of 2025 because it lines up with the legislature when they're doing their work and when we'll be doing all of our budget work as well.
I have one question, I guess.
Yes.
I think this is a good idea. I wonder what the kind of the look of it will be. Is there the potential to have some saying that it looks like that was an expensive campaign to put on? We had resources that we were able to put toward it that somehow backfires.
So this was all done in-house. So that, I couldn't point to, I think, this and say, wow, that was expensive. And the mailing that we've done doing with these materials, the print side of it, has all been lined up with mailings that we're already doing with the utility newsletter. The other assets that we've leveraged for the design work, for example, we're using some pretty inexpensive tools. Canva is one of them, very simple tool that we use to do a lot of the design work. So I feel pretty confident there that we have not sort of blown the budget or unwisely spent the dollars. We have made a recent investment in more in-house video equipment. Molly's got the skill set to do that well. In the past, we've been using these, which we all have in our pockets, and they've been working very well. But it's time for us to sort of up our game a little bit. So, for example, that we can use this, but then also a more serious camera, and then get more cutting and more sort of pace in our videos as opposed to what we usually have right now, which is a pretty static shot for us for meshing together a bunch of things. But it was a very modest investment. Even with the new computer that we bought to help with some of that video editing work, I think the total investment was about $3,500, with a full 2/3 of that just being the computer itself. So for those types of dollars, and also to leverage the in-house skill that we have right now, I feel pretty confident that we're using the dollars wisely.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
Next big headline, street stories. This was a story that we really wanted to hammer last year. It's one we're gonna be right on top of this year. For the, I don't know, since as long as I've been on staff now, this is 6 years, I'm about to finish 7. Every single year, you all have made a new high in investment in streets. You have heard your residents very clearly that they expect the transportation network to be reliable, and you have responded with the appropriate staffing and the appropriate funding. And staff has done a wonderful job, I think, especially in this last year, on getting a number of reconstructions done and other maintenance projects done. We don't have.
But Matt, what's that figure for this year? Was 3 million?
Oh, no,
No,
it's
no,
way higher
way,
than
way
that.
high.
It's in the double digits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For streets?
for streets, because we were doing 2 reconstructions at the same time.
Right, that's true.
It's probably, Liz, do you remember it off the top of your head? It's probably 7-8 million. Is what we buy.
I was
would be
just
my
thinking
guess.
maintenance, but when you look at the full scale depth of reconstructions, that really bumps that up.
Well, and then again, if you add, you're just thinking rehab,
Yeah,
we're in the 7, we had 2 reconstructions that were 3 to 4 million, and we were doing almost 3 million in other rehab. So I would say we're close to that $7 million number just in this last
yeah,
year.
it used to be 1, but it'd be about 3 million with the rehabs, and then you add another 4.
And this happened to be a rare year. We had 2 reconstructions the same year.
Yep. Now, the big ones that are still out there, which there's, spending. The interchange project, our portion of that, obviously, there's other money coming in from Riverdale and State, but Alice's Road gets underway too. So communicating on about those, the way we are right now with the interchange, definitely once we get started with Alice's Road, that's going to be important, because there are going to be some substantial detours when we get into Alice's Road that are going to affect a lot of people who have come to really depend on that corridor. So communications there is going to be important. We'll also have the finish up phase for the last part of 114th Street, which will be the first part of the construction season. Go. Yep, so that's another one. We know that one gets disrupted. The good news on that phase is that we're not in front of all the dealerships the way that we were with the first 2 phases. And it's a smaller section there than I think the others that we were involved in.
We're also going to be doing some bridge work on the 114th Street Bridge at the same time. So the closure needs to be right at City Hall there anyway. So we're actually going to get some of that bridge work done at the same time while that closure is happening. So it won't change anything.
We're gonna make the bridge for the pedestrian side a little bit wider.
Now, that would be a much more involved project in terms of the structure. So our hope is with some of the improvements that we're making with Greenbelt Landing, with the connectivity over to the library and then the trail on the north side, that provides for a much better experience.
The thing is riding your bike over the bridge.
Well, and that's why we have pedestrian bridge just.
The last one I want to mention, the asphalt overlays, they were very well received in Country Club neighborhood. And during the CIP workshop, you all saw what the plan is to complete a lot more asphalt overlays in this coming season, construction season. So we'll stay very close to the homeowners associations there so that they know when it's coming. But it seems like from the communication standpoint, it seems like it was a very smooth process and well-received process last year that we should be able to learn from and replicate in this coming year. Questions about streets?
And just for reference, Alice's Road Phase 1A that we just had the public hearing for tonight, that total project cost for just that phase is roughly about $6.5 million. Split between us and Joaquin.
14.7 for this next year.
14.7 million,
14.7.
yeah, that includes the Alice's Road in that.
And for comparison, with the two recons we were working on last year, the streets number from the CIP was 16.4.
I might have had the Alice's.
I think it did have some engineering though for Alice's Road in there as well.
That might have been.
Okay, parks. This is another area where the residents say, do this work really, really well. This matters to us. And you all are making incredible investments in multiple parks over the course of this coming year that we're going to want to really talk about. Greenbelt Landing at the top of the list. We are now into construction. We've got some holdups still a little bit with our federal partners, but we're working through those. Later on this month, or the first part of this, the 2025, I think we'll have a chance to tell a component story of Greenbelt Landing, which will be aquatic dance. That's our public art piece. So we're looking forward to doing that, potentially when we have the visit from our artist, if they're so willing. We'd like to have a chance to do a little storytelling with them. Lanand Park is going to be fantastic. The next big touch we have there, as I mentioned before, will be that voting on the playground. We also have a 86th Street neighborhood specific kind of newsletter update that will be mailed out to every available address in that neighborhood that will go out in conjunction with West Des Moines Community Schools end of January, first part of February. That'll be our next great opportunity to really share the exciting news about the investments that are being made in Lanand and being made in that neighborhood. We'll be happy to celebrate with former Mayor Sorcina and his family to ribbon cut Sorcina Park later this spring.
Before you move on,
Yes.
on the Land Park mailing, is that just informational or are we soliciting from the residents in the mailing?
We think we're going to be ready to ask them to go to a site and vote on the playground equipment at that time. Yep. Which is important because, you know, it's nice to send these things out, but it's such a better hook if you give them something to do, a call to action.
Sure.
And then in this case, our call to action is going to be, give us your opinion on what that should be. We'll see from the schools. Molly and I are meeting with the comp staff. We had to bump that back a week at their request. We're meeting with them next week to kind of get our stories all bundled together. Molly and I are going to do the layout for it, and then the school district's going to help us with the printing and some of the mailing costs, which will split. The temporary flood-prone property area park, that will be coming online this year. And then we'll have our regular rhythm of storytelling about invasive species management, the goats, adopt a trail, adopt a stream cleanups, trail etiquette, good stewardship practices, and safety. Lots of things going on here with our trails. I would be remiss if I didn't note though, one where our neighbors and our friends have been very patient with us. That's out on Little Walnut Creek, east of Alice's Road. We're going to work very, very hard to get that trail replaced as early in 2025 as we can, weather permitting. There still is some work that needs to be done, but that neighborhood has been very patient with us, and we want to make sure we get their trail back.
And speaking of trails too, in terms of connecting back to the street story is obviously we have the closure right now of the Greenbelt Trail.
Yeah.
Hopefully later this year, we have an announcement information of getting that reopened once the DOT has completed their, you know, the superstructure work that we can get something reopened.
Okay. 86th Street activation, I mentioned a couple things related to that with the mailing that we have coming up, with the land park voting, with the temporary park that's going to be coming on board. With the two others to note quickly, we'll have our second sort of collaborative event with Crestview as we get ready for the start of the 25-26 school year. That was a great success this past year from the school district's perspective. And I think also from our city staff perspective, to have so many people come in and do that early voting on different elements of the park and see people enjoying the Harbach Center, which has seen huge investments and very successful investments over the past year, that all added up to a big win. The last thing I'll note, and we come back to this with some frequency, but we are making huge investments in that flood-prone property buyout area and going now into some additional planning for what that would look like in the future. I don't want to prejudge the outcomes of that planning process. It could be, though, that we'll have some things that are ready to sort of share publicly, more publicly than we already do, share them. So that first off, we keep the neighborhood involved and aware of what the thinking is sort of evolving, how it's evolving. But also because this is going to build up some excitement, right? The ideas that are coming forward through this planning are not only about people and property out of harm's way, but it is also about new amenities that are coming that are going to be aligned with the priorities that our residents say they want to see the city prioritize. Greenie, the GOAT build out, and some additional decision points on the horizon for communications platforms. That's going to be an important sort of piece of work that'll go throughout the course of 2025. The rollout for Greenie so far has been very popular. I was happy that KCCI picked us up to help us share that story. Got some nice compliments from some other city managers. Thus far, with sort of new opt-ins, earlier this week, I checked, we were at 60, but that was right as the newsletters were starting to hit. So that was our first sort of big push out of the opportunity. So tomorrow in Matt's email, we'll have an updated number for what our current opt-ins look like. We are migrating the people who were previously signed up for weather alerts through the website to Greenie. But we're not going to just do it and rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to keep the website process rolling for a time. We sort of set that date for the end of snow season, maybe May 1st. So people who are already relying on it, we keep them there. But we would like to see people start picking up Greenie because it is going to be a much more robust tool and produces content that looks a lot nicer than what the website generates right now with their alerts. So expect to see the Greenie logo throughout this year and well into 2026. I also want to give a shout out to everybody who's contributed to some major improvements made to the utility newsletter this past year. Great to get it in color. The process of getting it in-house for design has freed us up to do some things that we previously couldn't do. All the staff and everybody who contributes content for that has worked with us because we've had to move our deadlines up earlier into the month. That puts us a little risk in some timeliness, but nothing that we can't handle. The next step now is going to be how do we create a better digital experience for that newsletter and also bring more consistency to all of the city newsletters so they're better aligned with the city's brands and also just look a little fresher. Some of them have come, I think, starting to look a little longer in the tooth and are ready for a little updating and a little cleanup. Good news there, though, is we've got the skill to do that in-house. This is not something where we're going to have to go out to any kind of outside agency and have them doing any new branding or design for us. So I feel confident that we can get by this time next year to an even better place with our newsletters and keep driving more and more adoption. One nice compliment we got yesterday from Jennifer, Representative Converse and her staff is that when she is doing her legislative update communications, they are always looking at the Clive newsletter for stories that are happening in Clive so that then she can amplify those through her content as well. I can point to Clive Living as well as doing that, the Clive Chamber of Commerce doing that. We put stories out there and that are well-designed, well-written, are appealing and are have a good hook. People are picking them up and helping us validate that story and share it with other audiences, which we'd like to see. I won't go through all of these. These are a number of other topics that we're going to be touching on. One that isn't here would be the election that's coming up this fall. We will obviously get that basic core information out there so everybody knows how to participate. I do want to briefly, though, mention the transition that we'll have coming up on utility billing with stormwater. So you'll remember last year we had some important updates we needed to make to that billing process. So the administrative services team, Liz and her team, working with the communications team, we're going to be communicating specifically to some more commercial properties about some other steps that we're taking to improve accuracy of our calculations and also the accuracy of the billing. I don't need to get into all of that with you all tonight on that because we're going to talk about it when we get into the budget process. But it is again on the horizon, similar to the way it was at the end of, during 2024. Any questions that you would like me to go, or any topics here on this slide you'd like me to go into further? Okay. Here are a number of the tools that we're going to use. Many of them you've seen before. I like to keep, so again, we don't have to be awesome everywhere. We want to prioritize the places where we want to be awesome, and these represent some of those prioritized platforms. The bullet there at the bottom, though, I do want to call that out. Creating a formal AI policy and user guide. This is largely sort of an output of the conference that Councilman Michelini and I went to. We were able to join sort of a coalition of other communities that are putting together some really useful pieces. When we get into the discussion of the communications policy, you'll see that I've got at the end of it a little shout out to an AI policy that is in course is being drafted now. AI policy is much more comprehensive than though just generative AI communication. So we'll want that to be sort of the place where we put that stuff and have a reference to it in all the other appropriate policies like the comms policy. But expect to see that later on this year. One more shout out too, with Greenie, on top of what we have with our website, we have done a much better job in communicating in multiple languages, which is important. And if you want to feel the importance of that in a very, very strong way, and to my mind also a very hopeful and optimistic way, go hang out with any of the kids over at Crestview Elementary. Go hang out with any of the kids over at Crossroads Elementary. You can't go into an elementary school in Clive, where it's in the school district, and not meet families where their primary language spoken at home may not be English, or they may be English learners. We need to make sure that we're meeting those families in Clive, sort of where they're at. And with these digital tools, we can do that with greater ease and efficiency than we ever could before. So that's a very positive step. The last one I want to mention before we talk about the communications policy is the big sort of pivot we made last year that you all approved, which was hiring a communications specialist. Molly has been an absolute rock star for us in her first year. She's now reached the 12th point here just this week. And the skill that she's brought, the knowledge base that she's brought, the speed at which she's acquired all of this Clive-specific knowledge and in touch with our audience and sort of understanding our voice and where we want to be, it's really been fantastic. We're doing a much better job than before while I was on staff, I think also supporting departments. And we want to do even better on that front in this coming year. So one of the things that Molly will be tasked with that's identified here on this slide, but we haven't been able to dive into as much in our first 12 months, is department-specific trainings for the things that really matter to them on their storytelling, things they want to get better at. Could be simple stuff like working with the PD and social media. They've got some officers who are really interested in growing in that space, and we want to be able to support them. Some other spaces we're thinking about would be like with the fire department. How do we help them with video assets, for example, shorter reels that we can use on their social media platforms? But every department, as they come to us and they want to think, how can we do this better? We want to be there to help them do it, because this core model that we have of a dispersed communication set of responsibilities, where departments are empowered to do a lot of their own storytelling because they've got the skill and knowledge base to do it. That's important, because that, like Molly's position, is the way we get to what you all have said you wanted, which is more robust storytelling, more volume, and more quality. We're delivering that, and the resident survey data backs it up. And we want to make sure that the next time we survey the residents on quality of our information services, that we set another record as we have this past year in 2024. Any questions about the engagement plan for this coming year? Okay. Communications policy. So this policy was in your document, in your packet. It is a draft. You'll note that we reference, for example, Appendix A, which is going to be our disclaimer page on our website. We're creating that right now. You also want to make sure after this discussion, we incorporate your comments to have them before we then take it to legal so that they can give it a review too. And if everything moves as we expect, it'll take the month of January for us to button everything up. And then at a future meeting, we'll bring it forward either as another item for approval, formal approval, or put it on the consent agenda, depending on how extensive the changes are from what you see in your packet today. There at the bottom of this slide, I identify a couple spaces that involve the way that all of you communicate as representatives of the city. I want to preface it by saying, you all don't need the communications team permission to engage the meeting. Obviously, you run the shop. You guys get to, as individuals, engage as you see fit on issues that are important to you and things that you're hearing from your constituents. We do though like to promote some best practices, and I can say that all of you do a really great job with this, and we appreciate it. You let us know when you've had touches with media. You help us make sure that our assets are looking right when you want to do specific storytelling. Multiple times, for example, Councilman Klein, I have worked together to pull out specific points from documents like these when he is preparing to go in and talk to a group of constituents. We're always happy to do that. We just ask, as you have those touches with media or you're going into these speaking engagements, just give us a heads up so that we can see if there's a way that we can be helpers to you, and then we can also keep our eyes and ears open for ways that the audience is responding to you. Social content, social media, there's a lot on social media in this document. I want to thank our partners over at the City of Johnston, because a lot of what the work that they did on their policy has informed what we have in this policy. They've got a really great team there. We were happy to be able to learn from what they had previously created. Anything that you see on this slide that you'd like me to go into further? That's your honor. I've reached the end of my deck.
All right, thank you very much, Pete. Clay, your turn.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Pete's pulling up my PowerPoint here. So yes, I'm here today to give you guys all a brief update on some of the collaboration efforts that we're working on with Urbandale, some things that we've touched on in strategic planning. We're here to kind of give you some more insight into where the direction of those are headed and answer any questions you may have throughout this. So a couple of the things that we're working on here are our Urbandale Station 43 2080 agreement, which has been signed off by you guys all and is implemented. Our shared services and operational alignment, our City of Urbandale, our maintenance program, and the utilization of Utility 322 and our Medic SUV. Okay. The first one to talk about again is the one that you guys had before you, but it was kind of a renewal update of our Station 43 agreement. One thing that I think was important in that agreement, it did have an expiration date that we had turned into an evergreen agreement. So it will be a perpetual thing. But one of the key things that we updated in there was some staff requirements for Station 43. They kind of had a tiered staffing to get them to where they want. It was no longer applicable because they're fully staffed now. So we cleaned some of that language up in there. But I think the most important element of this particular agreement is our reestablishment and our commitment to Station 43. And not just Station 43, but to the City of Urbandale as a whole, of which we'll get into a little bit more of those here as well. So the next one that we're working on is our shared service and operational alignment agreement. What this really encompasses is our closest unit dispatching. So the best way to really kind of look at this is don't look at Clive as a 1-station city and Urbandale as a 3-station city. Look at Clive and Urbandale as a 4-station city. So the synopsis of really what this is you're going to get the closest ambulance and the closest needed apparatus if it's an engine, anything of the kind. So what we're doing is we're eliminating time from that. Again, you're getting the right resource as fast as we can get it to your door. So really neat advancement. We've got some technology with our CAD that's been evolving, and it's allowing us to do this. But again, what it's doing is getting the resources to your front door as soon as we possibly can. And again, getting you the right resources. It also outlines some operational specific stations, and I'll get into a little bit of this a little bit later, but what it's going to allow is this particular station to operate as an engine. If you're familiar with how we operate now, we have an engine in the bay and we have a ladder in the bay. So what that requires us to do is train on each of those 50% of the time. The operation of an engine is very intricate and requires a lot of time. And then we transition to a ladder, which poses a whole new set of problems. So under this agreement, it's going to allow the Station 32, Clive, to be an engine company, allowing us to be a lot better, efficient, everything under the sun, because we're operating one apparatus and we're not switching up between the two. A part of this is also the sharing of the frontline and our reserve apparatus. If you look at the fleet, there's a lot of money sitting behind a truck in a fire station. And when we start looking at backup or reserve units, there's a lot of money sitting there that's really not being used. So we sat at the table and we started thinking, does Clive need a backup fire truck 365 days a year? The answer is no. Do we need a backup truck 2 weeks out of the year? We do. Then we looked at Urbandale, the same situation. So when we start kind of sharing these reserve trucks, that's what that'll allow us to do. If we need a backup truck, we simply go get one from Urbandale, and they can do the same here. So again, it's a better way to use the resources. And as we're all familiar, the price tag of these apparatus is not going down. It is skyrocketing. So it was a way that we could better use tax dollars and do things better. And in my opinion, do them right.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
so whether we're talking about the dispatching or the sharing of these equipment, does that impact in any way how we interact or respond with our other neighbors, whether it's Waukee or Windsor Heights or?
Under these agreements, no. We will still offer mutual aid, automatic aid, no different to those neighboring cities as we do now. Under this particular agreement, none of that
The fact that we
changes.
have one less truck here doesn't impact how we would respond to Windsor Heights.
No. And a lot of that is because of some advancements in the technology within our CAD system. So the one thing we wanted to do is we have a primary response, which is our typical first out apparatus. We have a backup, which is our reserve apparatus. The CAD then steps up to create a third redundancy in there, and that's simply the CAD system. So in the event every apparatus in the city of Clive and every apparatus in the city of Urbandale is on calls, it would then pull Waukee, West Des Moines, or Windsor Heights, whichever one is closer. So we have multiple redundancies in place, but we don't forecast that to happen very often, if ever. And that's-
Councilmember Weaver, I think one thing that's important too, is we're not necessarily gonna have less trucks here. We're gonna have different ones. So instead of having a ladder and an engine, we're gonna have an engine and an engine. We'll be keeping one of those reserve engines at our station that we both, in Urbandale and us, can utilize. What that means for us, as the chief will show in an upcoming slide, is now we're not replacing a ladder truck that's double the price of an engine, if not more than that. So there's the savings there just in the short term, but now across the system of the 4 stations, we only need to have a couple of reserve engines and one reserve ladder versus we were having multiple reserves between us and Urbandale. And so they're gonna see savings, we're gonna see savings. And then with the standardization of the fleet too, saving on training time and also then standardization as we'll get into a maintenance of this apparatus.
Yeah, and all that makes sense. And obviously, I like all that. I guess where I was thinking was, if we don't have a ladder truck here, how does that impact Windsor Heights at all, if any? Just curious.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It'll still pull the same ladder truck, but it'll be coming from Station 43. And if Station 43's ladder's out of service, it would pull West Des Moines
42.
or 42, correct. It would pull the next closest ladder truck. And next is the standardization of training. Again, going back to engine specific or ladder specific, Urbandale has some great new resources and some technical rescue training and stuff like that. But again, in an attempt to standardize it across the board, we're gonna standardize how we train, certification levels that we have. So across the board, we could get into one of their trucks and safely operate it, and they can with ours as well.
That also utilize that joint training facility training as well. What's that called, Chief?
The Fast Center,
Fast Center.
correct.
Continued utilization. of that
Same
as well.
thing. And we've really upped the game in that whole thing with our metro-wide training. Waukee comes over and utilizes it quite a bit with us. So and Windsor Heights, Johnson and Grimes come over. All the cities kind of train together using that facility. And that's all kind of, again, the foundation of really what this is we can't do it by ourselves. Do it as a big unit. And that training tower serves as well as kind of that training element of that. A neat element in this is the battalion chief utilization. which is stationed out of Station 42, but it is a battalion chief that's on 24/7. And that particular chief level officer, we have built into our role order. And if a chief level officer is needed, they will respond automatically to Clive's calls, which again saves time. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning and a structure fire comes out, one of us will go still, but it takes us a little bit of time to get there. Their battalion chief would be there much quicker and be able to assume that role as it would be a Clive chief officer as well. And then the standardizing the fleet, as I'll get into a little bit with our maintenance program, but the goal here is to standardize our ambulances, standardize the apparatus, standardize the staffing and all the certification levels. And one neat thing about that, because if we have an EMS call, there's a good chance it's going to be a Urbandale ambulance and a Clive fire truck. If that particular call is a bad call, they will then need to take some Clive firefighters with them. But if we're standardizing all of our stuff, we know how to use cardiac monitor, for example, just as good as they do. So again, it's an operational enhancement while keeping the same things across the board the same. So this here kind of breaks down what the asset transfer would look like. So this asset transfer essentially sends our ladder truck to Urbandale and an Urbandale engine to Clive. And that engine would serve as our second out within our rotation. But if you kind of look at the flow chart here, again, the cost of apparatus is not going up. What we're seeing year after year, and per some of the manufacturers, it's north of 4% every year over and over and over. So when we break down and we look at the math, and for us not having to replace a ladder truck versus us replacing an engine truck, we're saving about $85,000 a year just on the apparatus. That does not account for a ladder truck needing a lot more maintenance because it's a bigger truck. All the ladders need certifications, maintenance, inspections, and all that stuff. So that doesn't even account for that. But just because of the asset transfer, we'll be saving around $85,000 a year with, again, an operational enhancement. We really won't see any blip in the radar other than what we're doing is better. And as
For Urbandale to take on a more expensive asset.
it is, and I don't have those particular numbers, but they're going to be able to eliminate a engine from their fleet and eliminate an ambulance from their fleet as well. So this whole shared services doesn't just apply to the fire suppression apparatus, it applies to the ambulance as well. So if Urbandale runs out of all their backup ambulances, they can come take our backup ambulance. So it does allow for some pretty significant cost savings on their end as well.
We're drafting this agreement right now. With the legal counsel involved, we're kind of working with Urbandale. And we're thinking through kind of what happens when those transfers of apparatus in terms of who's liable, if there's damage to it, things like that. So these are all the details that we're working out in terms of what this agreement with Urbandale for this next step.
Any questions on this one?
This is the big savings slide. So in terms of when we talk about storytelling, this next step with Urbandale, this is one of the big saving slides to show our friends at the legislature and surrounding communities that there's ways you can do this and save quite a bit of money in terms of if you align your apparatus and have these sharing agreements. We've had a couple other communities that have asked us about this, what we're working on with Urbandale, our neighbor to the east and our neighbor to the west. And so those are things that there might be more communities that come into play on this that could further the savings that you see here.
You know, Matt, as we talk about storytelling, this is a great story to share with both our residents, like you said, some of the outlying communities, but also our legislators on how we're streamlining our assets, how we're working together. And, you know, there's a lot of positives that are coming about this. The biggest one is just better service for our residents, in addition to the cost savings. So this is a great story to tell.
And I'll work with Pete, obviously, when that time comes. We're getting to that point where we're getting to be ready. But again, when we get it out to the media, we want to make darn sure all of our T's are crossed with Neil and legal and all of our agreements. So, but yes, it's going to be an absolute fantastic story to tell when we're all wrapped up. Another really cool piece to this is our maintenance program. So typically now when we have anything wrong with a truck, we take it to If it's an ambulance issue, we take it to Charles Gabus. If it's a truck issue, typically we have to take it over to Interstate and Altoona or find somebody that can work on a transmission or a water pump or any of those kinds of things. Urbandale has a fantastic staff over there that is licensed, trained, everything under the sun to work on fire trucks and ambulances. So we're drafting up a maintenance program that will essentially allow us to simply take a truck down the street and let them work on it. There's a lot of benefits that are going to come out of this. Internal knowledge of our apparatus, specifically if they're working on the same truck over and over, they're going to get to know that truck, and we believe it's going to be a huge savings to us in the long run as well. Better fleet tracking. If we're seeing some historical issues with trucks, again, they're going to have more of an intimate knowledge of all of our apparatus, and they're going to be able to track this stuff better and keep an eye on this stuff better. A trust in the cost, huge importance. If we've got, as we're familiar with cars, we're kind of at the mercy of a maintenance person, right? But since we know where they live, right? We do trust that they're going to give us some accurate numbers and tell us what's wrong and get it fixed correctly.
That may be one part of the storytelling we were gonna nuance.
We can fluff that one a little bit, but we're pretty excited. They're great mechanics over there. And trust in the mechanics. We know that they're going to do it right. And if they're not, they're going to make it right. Pretty simple there. One cool thing about it is I call it a house call, but they're right down the street. We've already had them here. So it's really neat if we've got an issue that they can handle. The truck will be out of service for 5 minutes rather than 3 or 4 days. They simply come over and fix it, look at it, tell us they need it. They'll take it over to their shop. Incredibly convenient for us. But what that will ultimately do, if we have to take a fire truck to Altoona, it takes 2 people out of service. We got to run the truck down there. You're going to pay a diagnostic fee. You're going to sit on it for 4, 5, 6, 7 days, 2 weeks. We got to take 2 people out of service to go pick it up. We can run it just down the road. So it's going to be incredibly convenient, costing us a lot less downtime. Downtime is a killer to fleets. It's a killer to these whole programs. If we're trimming back our fleet, we need our fleet to be in service more. So this will allow us to do that. So one thing with this maintenance program, they do have a $27,000 shop fee, just a little bit more than that. And it's a yearly fee that we'll pay up front. And it's an hourly shop rate that they charge us. Interstate, some of our other mechanics that work on it's $150 shop fee. So hourly alone, we see some pretty significant savings there. Again, they're licensed mechanics. They're licensed to work on the trucks. They're licensed to work on the pumps, the whole thing. A great example is a very recent issue we had with an ambulance. We had a simple battery issue that we had to take to Charles Gabus to get it fixed. And it was $175 diagnostic fee. Parts were $500 and the labor was $150. More than likely, they would have been able to come here to take care of it. Parts were $400 and the labor would have been $0 or $60. With a total savings of $425. What that doesn't account for is out of service time. Again, we would have had to take it to Charles Gabus. Who knows how long they'd have it, eliminating a lot of downtime and some cost savings there.
Urbandale do this with other cities?
They do not.
So where did the shop fee come from? How did they pluck that number?
Yeah, the way that so the Public Works maintenance bills the fire department a shop fee as well. So we use the same formula that we do, how we broke down Station 43. It's a certain percent, and that's what our percent came out to be. So Urbandale it's not a random number. There is a formula that we follow, and we felt it to be fair to follow the same formula that we did for Station 43.
Takes
So
into account overhead and administrative and kind of fixed costs for the facility. So they're treating us essentially like another department within the city.
So one cool thing about this as well is we started to look at the whole thing bigger picture. The question Mr. Klein asked me a couple years ago is why do we take a fire truck on every EMS call? The answer to that question is I have no idea. It's the way we've always done it. There's two things firefighters hate. We hate the way things are and we hate change. This has been the one thing we've always just done. But we took a real serious hard look at our response plan. Not every EMS call warrants a giant fire truck going down the road. Again, they're not cheap and there's no reason to simply take them. So we started utilizing our pickup truck, our utility to go on certain EMS calls, which has a great ripple down effect for us as well. simply a better resource to be utilized. Again, it's not a giant truck. More efficient. We're not beating up a big fire truck. It's an expensive fire truck. Again, everything under the sun that you could imagine with not taking that truck down the road. About 2 weeks ago, we were able, at one specific time, we had the ambulance on an EMS call, we had the fire truck on a fire call, and we had the utility pickup on a call as well, which is kind of a cool thing. If that particular calls would have came out a year ago, we'd have had both of our units on our call. We'd have had a mutual aid partner on one of the other calls, and we'd had another mutual aid partner on another call. So we kind of freed up a lot of resources by just doing things a little bit smarter. And one thing that we're seeing from all of this is we're seeing a decline at our Station 22 calls and the Windsor Heights Fire Department, or the Urbandale Fire Department utilization. Because we're not bringing a big fire truck over, it's cutting down on the need to use some of those other apparatus. Again, kind of going back to, if we're going to start trimming down our fleet, we need to make sure our fleet is being used correctly. And our utility truck is being able to do that. It's causing a lot less wear and tear on those trucks. There's some cost savings there. In the end, it's just a smarter way of doing business, in my opinion. What this is also allowing us to do is, since we don't have all of our staff in an ambulance and a fire truck, because we're using a utility vehicle as well, we're kind of increasing our fleet by a vehicle. It's allowing us to do a lot more public outreach because we have another vehicle kind of being used in our fleet. In the end, it's simply smarter staffing, in my opinion. I can't really think of a better way to put this whole thing other than we're doing things smarter. So with this utility, these are some things that we're able to accomplish currently by doing that. More public outreach, things such as fire extinguisher training, school daycare visits, CPR training, smoke detector installations. If your smoke detector is chirping at 2 in the morning, you'd be shocked at how many times they call 911. So now we take a giant fire truck at 2 in the morning with four guys or gals to your home when we can take a pickup truck. Again, it just makes more sense. And it also allows us to run 2 EMS calls out of this fire station. So if our first out ambulance goes on a call, it still leaves 3 people back at the station where we can take a second out ambulance as well. Again, lowering our need to rely on some other agencies when we can handle those in-house as well. One of the greatest things I think that has come out of this is it's freeing up some staff time. And the majority of our patient EMS calls that we have, we physically call them the next day just to simply follow up with them. And we are getting an incredible feedback from them. Majority of the time, if not all the time, they don't need anything. They just appreciate us checking in on them. And we're seeing some incredible benefits already in just a short amount of time that we've been doing this. It's quite surprising what a phone call simply does to a patient that we took to the hospital yesterday. But again, the goal with this patient follow-up is if that particular patient needs something, we have a firefighter in the pickup truck that can go over to their home and help them. I can't find my medications, or I fell because of my rug, or we can send a firefighter over there to help them. Frees up a staff member. And again, it's just an overall better experience for our customer, if you will. In the end, this is what we were trying to accomplish. We want to get the right people at the right place at the right time with the right resource, period. When we started looking at a lot of these things, we knew some things could be better from an operational standpoint. All we really wanted to do was move the ball forward operationally. How can we do things smarter? The one thing that we did not do going into this was think, how can we save money? Ironically enough, money was the byproduct of doing smarter business. Next slide. Which leads to this, what's next? It's not a question for you, it's a question for me, it's a question for everybody. As we approach these collaboration and these efforts that we're making, nothing's off the table. If we can explore a better way to operate the Clive Fire Department, working with Urbandale or other agencies, we're gonna at least look into it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But if there's something on the table that we can do to operationally better our response or be more financially responsible, we're going to explore it. And with what we're able to accomplish with these agreements, I'm pretty excited to see what's next, because I think what's next is going to be even bigger than what we have in front of us. And that's the end of the PowerPoint. I am happy to answer any questions.
Well, I just want to commend you. This is tremendous work, and I love your mindset. And I love what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think as we've discussed this and talked about this for a number of years, it's exactly where we're going. This is the vision to streamline services, cooperate with our neighbors, to just work smarter, not harder, utilizing staff and our resources at the right place. Good job, Clay. We're going in the right direction
Appreciate it.
and saving money.
I like that too. Yes, ma'am.
I agree. It looks really good. And this may be embedded in some of what you've talked about, but I was hearing about another fire department in Iowa that is starting some newer approaches to the people who call in multiple times for service on health issues. And is there a component of this that's looking to address some of that in Clyde and Urbandale?
Yes, that last slide, being able to have a dedicated firefighter on a separate apparatus pickup is really where we're trying to kind of go with this. The community risk reduction is, if you paid attention to Des Moines, they've done some fantastic things at the homeless shelter that's really plummeted some of their calls. So in trying to, there's a lot of great things that Dallas, Texas is doing, and it's falling exactly in line with that. And as we're trying to, again, think smarter, utilizing this utility pickup is kind of what we're hoping to continue to build on that. Patient follow-ups is huge. You'd be surprised at how many times we can prevent a call from happening again by just sending somebody over there to check on somebody. So that is a component to this, and that is something we'll continue to kind of build. We're learning as we're building to see what Clive needs the most. So it's a little bit of a slow process, but we want to do it right. So there is a component to that, and I think you'll see a lot more of that just with the environment we're living in.
I would think that follow-up would create a lot of goodwill too. I mean, I think people would appreciate that.
They do. They truly do appreciate the phone call. They're quite surprised when we call them.
Above and beyond.
But they do appreciate just a check-in. And again, we're more than happy to follow up with them. Questions? If they need something or they want something, again, we have a staff member where we're not taking an ambulance out of service. We're not taking a fire truck out of service.
Yeah, but it's as simple as a phone call to make sure that they got their medication that was prescribed after took them to the hospital and they got released. And that saves on an ambulance call. That's substantial resources that are being saved.
Anything else? Great work.
All right.
Great work. Thank you.
Big rubber up in California.
Yeah, sure. Correspondence, we have 3 items listed there. Matt, I don't know if you'll cover any of these in your report or not.
I can if you want. Wasn't intending to, but I can.
Okay, well, when we get your report, we'll move back to that. So reports, Pete, we'll start with you.
Be very brief. This is right on the doorstep of the start of the legislative session. Met with 3 of our members of our 4-person delegation, still working on getting scheduled with Representative Judge, but we'll see him tomorrow and a number of other folks at the West Side Legislative Breakfast. And then again, hopefully we'll see some of those legislators at the partnership's opening night reception that is on Monday, the 13th. Number of you already signed up to go on that. If you'd like to get added to our registration and you haven't talked to me, please let me know. One other one to note, tomorrow is the deadline for sending in our registration for the Clive Chamber Monthly Luncheon, which is next week, Wednesday. If you'd like to go to that, either just send me a quick reply or mention it to me here this evening after the meeting, and I'll make sure when I send in our registration that you're included.
Pete, anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. McCoy, do you have anything for us today?
No, one, congratulations to Eric. I wish I could have been there so you could have a picture with me. But, well done. I have no report.
Thank you very much. Susan?
Nothing to report.
Eric?
Just one quick comment on the Indianola withdrawal from CVB. You'd have a chance to discuss this with staff. Indianola only has a couple hotels, and it kind of withdrawn a little bit with, I think, a new city administrator from the greater regional Des Moines area a little bit. So it wasn't super surprising that they pulled out, but with the addition of Norwalk, which is a much, growing, city, that kind of offsets that. So that's all, Mayor.
Very good. Ted. Pre-con.
Just real quick, kind of building on what Pete was talking about earlier. I've joined the GovAI Policy Council, so we'll have a chance to have a little bit of input there, hopefully learn a little bit ahead of time what they're kind of steering the ship towards. And I know both of us now have access to their file library, which will be helpful, kind of help us avoid having to recreate the wheel, learn what they're doing, accelerate what we do as a result. I think that's it.
Very good. Matt?
Mayor, council, just a few items for tonight. Number one, hopefully this setup worked well for everybody tonight. If you have any suggestions on any slight adjustments you'd like to see with our temporary chamber location for the next 6 months, I felt like it went pretty smoothly. The council chambers, the old council chambers is no longer in existence anymore. If you've been over there, if you want to see, it's pretty much all gutted in the entire upper level of the building there behind the library. The library has reopened. So the front of the house library, we have a temporary wall up. We moved the circulation desk, and that has been operating since Monday. The occasional fire alarm will go off as we're taking apart some of the fire alarms. That's been fun for staff every now and then when those go off, but we're very close to those being no longer because as they take down the ductwork, they're having to take down all the fire alarm sensors. So we're moving along at a really good pace in terms of maybe just slightly ahead of schedule on the demolition, which is great. We get started on the turning that into a new council chamber space and office areas and areas for the public. So I'm excited about that. Also wanted to mention too that at your next council meeting, so again, a reminder, we'll be moving the January 23rd council meeting that would have happened to February 6th because of the Greater Des Moines Partnership Dinner. We'll have the Greater Dallas County Development Alliance here doing a presentation on what potential membership would look like for the city of Clive, as I touched base with you on, and we're including the cost for that membership in this upcoming budget process for your consideration. So Rachel will be, the executive director will be at your next council meeting. Also wanted to confirm, I know I've got a few RSVPs. If you haven't responded back to my meeting notice on the partnership dinner, please let us know. I think Councilmember Weaver, Klein, and Susan just let us know today, and the mayor and Pete and myself. So if there's others that want to attend, just let us know. We've got a table for 8. I believe, and so we usually will work with the chamber if we do have any open seats, but we need that confirmation here pretty quickly, just to know how many seats we will be filling. Also wanted to mention on the legislative front, there is a lot of work happening between the Iowa League of Cities and Iowa City County Managers Group on coordinating we know that the legislative session is starting next week. We know property tax is a high priority. There's a lot of proactive touches that are happening, whether it's the Iowa League of Cities or city managers across the state with their elected officials, touching base with their legislators. So I feel that the cities are in a much more proactive position going into this legislative session than we have in the past. There's still a lot more work to be done, and we still don't know what's coming at us, right? We're not getting a really good definition of what the goalposts are going to be for this round of property tax reform, and how much is there going to be conversation of revisiting the reform that they've already done with House File 718 on some unintended consequences that have happened with that. I'm hearing more chatter about that here in the last day or so, but those will be some interesting conversations to have, and we'll have some discussions about that, I'm sure, tomorrow morning. Last thing that I have is we'll be kicking off our collective bargaining negotiations next week with our fire police union and touching base with the council personnel committee on our strategies related to that. So a lot of things moving, and then we'll have a number of budget workshops, the 2 budget workshops happening in February, a lot to share with the council. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Matt? Matthew, is there any further correspondence?
In terms of the correspondence, one thing I did want to note, Councilmember Klein spoke to the Indianola one. In your next council packet, you'll have correspondence from Altoona and Norwalk from the Leaving Bravo, or at least sending their notification in. Leaving Bravo, so we did receive that notice, and of course, CIWW is now operationally commenced. That is the appreciation resolution that you saw in there, and then some other correspondence related to Bravo and their partnership appreciation. So a lot of discussions happening related to the regional entities. You've seen a lot of the news this week. I'll be sharing a number of articles with you that you've seen. I think there's been some good discussions too in terms of both the Iowa League of Cities magazine that I know I referenced in my weekly update to you last week. Some really powerful articles from some of your colleagues from across the state in terms of positioning some of our talking points with our legislators. I think you saw from the mayor of Altoona some items that he mentioned related to what the property tax reform is impacting economic development and a large data center project that they may not see benefits from now because of some of this legislation. So the voices are active among cities, which I think is really great to see. And we need to continue that drumbeat throughout the legislative session. That's all I have.
I do have a comment related to the legislation. This morning at the Iowa Commercial Real Estate Association breakfast, the program was a presentation by ICREA's lobbyist, Carney and Appleby firm. And yes, they talked a lot about property tax. They also said that they're expecting to see significant additional restrictions on stormwater and exteriors of properties, not being able to regulate that at the city level. And then they mentioned that Russ Trimble has become the top assistant to Jack Whitber, with Mary Earnhardt moving to become the head of the Iowa Gaming Association. So Russ will potentially have a place to have it.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have anything else for the good of the order this evening? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 7:26.